So here I'm going to talk about only one thing, and that's a very important operation. It's the combination or the combining of tables and or the merging of tables. This can be done on several occasions. For instance, if you have two tables which you want to put together uh, that have the same columns, so two data tables that have the same columns, but you want to join or create one table with all the rows in one table. That's something I will show you. And then also combining tables that have different kinds of columns but have one identifier or two identifiers in common. I'll make this more clear with an example. To do this, I will be using different data sets than I used before. The first one is the user ID log data set. If we open it up in Notepad, you will see it only has the ID of a follower and the political party he or she is following. So only two variables and the row numbers of the data set. So that's one data set we will be working with, and then there's two other data sets we will be working with. It's the profile data 2 set. It's quite a large data set. So what we have here is a data set with all the profile information from the followers of the political parties. So we have, for instance, the name of the follower, the ID number of the follower, some location, I think, or description. So here you have a location, description, then some other variables, profile, date of profile creation, time of profile creation, and then you have some information on the number of followers and followees, number of total tweets sent, I think, and the number of total likes, and the date of the data collection. So we have this data set, but as you can read in the logbook of the data collection, there were some problems and we had to collect additional data. So that's profile data extra. And this is just a similar data set, but in contrast to the other data set, this is a quite small data set. I think it has 74 other profiles. So it has the same columns, the same variables, but it are new rows. So we want to combine these data sets. So let's see how we do that in Power BI. So we open up Power BI. And we get the data. This is something you should now be familiar with. So this looks all okay, except for the IDs. We do want them to be a text format, not a number. It will make it easier to merge later on. Then we get other data. So the profile data. So again, you see here the strange symbols. This is because of the file origin. So we set this to UTF-8. And now the symbols are correct. I think for the other columns seem to be okay. Again, except for this is the ID column. So let's convert that to text. And then finally, we also need the profile data extra. And this is the same as before. Come on. some reason it's acting strange. Okay, we're back. So we convert it to text. So you see here we have 47 cases that we want to join to this larger data set. So you can scroll down a long time. If you want to know how many rows there are in this data set, so you would have, it's not useful to scroll down. This is a really big file. There's actually quite a neat option here in the, I think it's in the transform ribbon. Yeah, so the count rows will give you the number of rows in a data set. So if you click on it, it will show there's 229,238 rows in the data set, in this data set, and in this there will be 74. Okay. So when you want to combine data sets, you will also be at the home ribbon, and this is where you need to be. So the append queries function will add rows, will add additional rows to a data set, whereas the merge queries function will combine different tables, different data sets based on some column or columns that serve as an identifier. So for this particular problem, we need to combine the rows, so we need to append queries. So then you can always choose between append them directly into the existing data set or make a new data set. So let's make a new data set. So we will concatenate the rows from two tables into a single table. So we have only two tables, not three or more. But this is also possible if you had more than one extra profile data collection. You could do that in one go. So we have the profile data as our primary table and the profile data extra as that what needs to be appended. We press OK. So this is our full data. And if we would count the rows, the number of rows, we would see that this is the sum of the number of these rows and 74, yeah, which seems to be more or less all right. So that's it for the combination of the rows. This is fairly straightforward, of course. We also want to combine data sets based on the column. So for instance, we have this data set here where we have the ID of somebody and the political party he or she is following. However, in the final data set, so in the profile data set, we do not have this information. So we do not know of these people who is following which political party. Moreover, people can follow more than one political party. So we don't only need to add a column, but if, for instance, Max Riske is following 3 political parties, we need to have 3 separate rows for this person. Within the column we create, the extra column we will create each of the political parties. So maybe now is a good time to have a look at the slides about combining tables. So there's different ways to combine tables, not only in Power BI, but in any tool or program where you can manipulate data sets. So there's always the idea of an inner join, a left and right outer join, so a left outer join or a right outer join, and a full outer join. So I will discuss them briefly so you know what we're talking about. So an inner join will, and maybe this is will make it very clear what it does. So you have one table, your primary table with name and age, and then you have a second table with name and city of birth. So what they have in common is the name variable. So if you would do an inner join, it will only take those values that both tables share, that both tables have in common, based, of course, on the unique identifier, and this is name in this case. So we have an Eline. Eline is also here. We have Bruno in this data set, but no Bruno here. So this will not be used. We have Matze in this data set, but not here, so this will not be used. We have a Christophe in this data set. We have a Christophe in this data set. This will be used. And Victor and Julie are also not in the first data set. So this would equal the new data set with only what they have both in common. So with a name, so this is the first data table that is joined with the second data table. So you have two name variables. This will have some other extension probably. And you will probably, once you have created this table, just delete this column because you already have the name here. So you finish with a table, with one table, with all the information. So the name, the age, and the city of birth. Now, if you do a full outer join, you basically take everything. So we have the same situation. We have the same names in our primary table, the same names in our secondary table. But what is happening now, if you do a full outer join, it will also create values for those names that only appear in one of both tables. So of course, if you then create a combined table, you will have null values because for Bruno, we don't know his city of birth. And also, so in the name of the second data set, we don't have the name, so this will also create a missing value. So null stands for missing value in Power BI. The same is true for Matze and also for Victor and Julie, but that's missing in this data set. So the full outer join will take everything and fill in the blanks with missing values. Then we have a left join and a right join. So the left join takes everything that is in the primary table, so in this table, and then looks up whether there's extra information on the data in this table, adds it, but even if there's no extra information, it will also add that in the new data set you're creating. But it will not add the data in table 2 that is not present. And again, this is about the name variable, so because that's what both tables share. So it will not take the data or not create data for Victor and Julie because they're only in the secondary data set and not in the primary data set. So we have those four names in the primary data set. Since it's a left join, you have those four names here, but you don't have data for them here. And these names will not appear. So, and for the right outer join, well, it's actually the reverse than from the left outer join. So it's basically the same, but here you start from the secondary table. So it will take all the data or create a new data set with all the data from the identifying column, and it will not take the data from the primary table. So, but of course, for Victor and Julie, we don't have any data from this data set because they don't exist here. And that's why you get the null values, the missing values here. Okay, let's see how this works in practice in Power BI. So what we want to do is to from this table, so let's rename this to an ID variable. No, this is the name, sorry, and this is the ID. So we want to merge or to join two tables, this table and this table. So let's see how that works. So again, we're going to the merge queries. Again, you can choose to do it directly in this data set or create a new one. I'm always more in favor of creating a new one. So, and then you have the option to select two data tables. So we have the full data. This is our primary table. And we have the user ID. This is the secondary table. So now probably, well, not probably, so we know for a fact that when I collected the IDs of the followers of those political parties, I got more IDs than when I collected the full profile information. This is for several reasons. The first reason is that some profiles were deleted or banned after I collected this data. So I got their profile IDs here, but they couldn't be found when I collected the full profile data, or some profiles were protected. So I know when I collect Twitter data which profile IDs are following political parties, but I can't access their profile information because they're protected accounts. So there will be less IDs in this table. So less in this table than there will be in this table. So eventually, now we have to think about what we want to do. So we want to actually have the data only if they appear here, because we want to do our analyses based on the profile information. So we only want a match with the political party if they appear in the primary table. But of course, well, normally it should be the case that every ID here can be found back here. But suppose that's not the case. Well, if that's the case, we could do a left outer join, because then we would take all the IDs from this table and this column and match it with this one. So remember, we would be doing this, the left outer join. So we would keep all the data here and only match or only integrate with what we find here. So no missing data from the secondary table will be imported, but as you can see, if there's data in the first one that doesn't appear in the second one, we will have missings. Logically speaking, with this data, we shouldn't have missings because we can be pretty sure that all the IDs here will appear also here. But just to be safe, I would say we do inner join. So if you do that, you can't click anything, so you have to select the defining columns. So, and here you already see that Power BI makes an estimation. So it matches 229,312 of the rows with the same amount from the other table. So that's good news. So if we press OK, this might take some time because it's a big data set. So here we are. Did we get a new column? We do get a new column, and actually the rows consist of a table, which is logical because this is the table we have imported or added to the other table. So this new table here will actually contain 3 columns, right? Because this data set has 3 columns. So how do you expand that? You do it by clicking on this button. So if you click on this button, you will have the choice. You see 3 columns you can choose. Of course, this is just the row numbers. We don't need that. We don't need the ID because it's already in our data set, so we only want the party information. And if we pick use original column name as prefix, it will use the column name from the other data set. So let's try this and press OK. Okay, there you are. So this looks pretty neat, right? So we have this person only follows the NVA, this person too, but this person, so this name now has a lot more rows. He's actually following a lot of political parties. So Vrije Beroepen is following Groen, Open VLD, NVA, Groen, Open VLD, NVA. So what is wrong here? Groen, Open VLD, NVA. I already see what happened. So what happened here is that this data was actually collected at different times. And as a matter of fact, during the data collection, this is probably the number of followers or the number they are following. You see that they gained some followers or that they followed extra people. And that's why this is for Power BI a different row because it doesn't have exactly the same data. So how do we deal with that problem? So let's think about this. So one thing we could do is, or we could try to do, is to remove duplicates. So if you would select only this column, and remove the duplicates, that would be problematic because it would just keep one name and only the first political party they're following. So that's not what we want to do. But maybe if we selected this column and this column, so we select both columns, and if we then remove the duplicates, there you go. So this looks a lot better. So we have vrije beroepen. So as you can see, there's always situations that you can't foresee. So then you need to think about how to solve this problem. So lucky for me, this was easily solved. So now we have, and it also points out the importance of checking your data and checking if your transformations come out as you expected. So now for vrije beroepen, this person follows 3 political parties, so N-VA, Groen and Open VLD. So I think for data, for merging and joining data tables, this is the most important thing you guys will need to know, and you guys will have to use probably, because normally you should have for your exercises more than one data set that you need to combine. Of course, if you had more than one key column, so like for instance ID, and you also wanted to join, for instance, on political party, you could select them both. So, and then it will do a matching based on these 2 columns. So these 2 columns would need to have the same values, so identical values, in order for them to be matched. To do this would be a bit useless because this is a join we already did, so it will only give you problems, but it's a possibility that you could match these 2 columns. So the reason why it's not doing anything is because the order of selection is different here, I guess. So this is the first, this is the second. So this is taking too long, but still you can do it with 2, right? So it matches everything because it comes from the same, or it's the same table basically. Of course, if we delete this, we could also do the left outer join, and this should be more or less the same. So we have our full data, merge as new. So we select the identifying column and we do a left outer join. It's also saying that it will match the same amount of rows. So this would be identical. Now imagine that you wanted to do a right outer join. we could just change the column. So remember, the right outer join will take everything from the second or the secondary data set, but not from the primary. So if we wanted to do a right outer join, we could actually just switch. So now you don't have the same amount, of course, because there's more here than here. So it will create missings. But if we just switch the table, so from here to here, and then select the ID, you will get the identical same result. So that concludes this video on merging and appending queries.